Hi and welcome. So today I want to share with you more about what's really holding you back from resolving your emotional eating. So if you're new here, welcome. My name is Michelle. I'm a certified holistic nutritionist and emotional eating expert, and I wanted to share with you what might be holding you back that you're not aware of. So, this is interesting because as I've been working with clients over the years, the main thing that I see preventing them from moving forward is to commit to themselves. So let's say you found a solution and you're trying it. And so this could be all of the magic bullet solutions and all of the things you're trying. It's really hard to commit to it and to sort of commit to yourself because something keeps coming up to prevent you from doing that. So there's a lot of resistance. So the number one thing holding you back from resolving your emotional eating, it might not be that you don't have the right sort of plan in front of you or system. It's that this resistance is coming up. And then of course, if you had the right when I'm saying plan, it might be the right way for you to eat, or you might be trying to implement ways of eating that are beneficial to you, but you're sort of missing the mark. The biggest thing I see is being able to commit and to move through that resistance. And that's something that we're not taught. And most of the time in our society, what we see is that we need to willpower through. We need to push past these limits because, the way we're set up in our society is to fight against ourselves. We don't actually understand why we have this resistance to doing something in a new way. And that brings me to sort of my second point, which is around not really understanding the emotional eating pattern. So a lot of the times we think we just have to control food, we have to control our body, and this is how we're going to resolve our emotional eating because, of course, on the surface, it looks like I eat too much, I'm hungry all the time, my body is changing, I don't feel comfortable, I'm obsessing about food. So we're seeing everything on the surface. And really what's happening is that emotional eating is sort of like this iceberg when you look at it. On the surface, we see all these things going wrong. We're not eating we're eating too much. We're trying all the things to combat the eating, combat the thoughts, combat the change in our body. And it seems like a simple equation, A plus B equals C or A minus B equals C. You know what I'm trying to say? It seems so easy. The math seems so easy. But if this is an iceberg, if we look under the surface, there's all of these other things happening, and it's not simple math. It's more like algebra or calculus. We need to look at the bigger picture. And in all honesty, I feel like this would be so much more easier if we were aware of this and our parents taught us this. But if they didn't, we're sort of left to put the pieces together and figure it out. And it seems so easy on the surface because when we look at the people that have, let's say, the way they relate to food or their body or their emotions, it looks like A plus B equals C because under the surface, they don't have this other stuff going on. Everything is in alignment. So they can do the simple actions and get the results they want. Whereas someone with this emotional eating pattern, there's a lot of things under the surface going on. So please understand that emotional eating is a coping mechanism. It's a coping pattern. It's where we use food to soothe ourselves whenever any discomfort or distress comes up. It's a pattern we created to survive. And it usually happens when we're very young because certain needs of ours weren't met. And when we're left with discomfort as a human, we need to feel okay and good. And food, when you eat food, biologically in our body, it releases endorphins. It feels good. It's pleasurable to eat. Food also connects in with love. So it kind of buys and ties into some of those needs we might have had, more emotional needs. And so when we start understanding this pattern, we start seeing how to truly resolve it. And so the third thing that I'm going to mention that's holding us back from resolving this is having all of these pieces in a program to help us move forward. So when I was on my own emotional eating journey, and like all the clients that come to me, there's always a missing piece. So you're trying everything. You think I've got the food piece and I'm working out my body and maybe I have some stuff from childhood and I'm working in therapy, but those are still on the surface. And I'm not taking away from the importance of any of those. Like I said, if everything under the surface is aligned and you don't have resistance, you can probably take a simple strategy and implement it. But if you can't, there's all this resistance. And that's the majority of us. We have this resistance. We have all of these things that are, these limitations and these beliefs that we inherit from our parents and our family and from society that's actually not aligning us to who we are and connecting us to who we are. And, I get it. I was there grasping for every solution, every diet, trying to fit into this box to be acceptable and be loved, because that's what we're sort of told. If we look a certain way, if we are a certain way, then we're going to be acceptable and loved. And we sort of learn this when we're very young. Our parents, unless they're very awake and aware, kind of try to mold us into this box. And so we never fully know who we are. And so that's how we develop these coping patterns and strategies, because we just weren't taught this. And of course, our parents weren't taught this. And this is sort of cyclical and it goes down. But at some point, like for me, for instance, I started to find more information and do different work. And I knew I just didn't want this for myself or for, I didn't have my son yet, for my son, and that I wanted to create change. And I could see people had this. They had this relationship to food and their body, and they weren't obsessing and they felt good. And I just knew it was possible for me. And so I'm going to share with you the areas that I see that we need to help us move through this pattern. And these are the areas that the Emotional Eating Evolution program are built around. And that's why it's built around these areas, because it's important to have all these pieces in place to resolve your emotional eating. And when they're all in place, this is how we do this. And so I'm going to start with the first area is really around true nourishment and strategic digestion, because emotional eating is almost like this layered cake. We start off with actually creating the coping mechanism, but then we run into, we start treating our bodies a certain way. We start interacting with food a certain way because of the coping mechanism. And I sort of work a little bit backwards to peel it away. So we start with true nourishment and strategic digestion. We're looking at optimizing and really connecting you back to your body and how to nourish yourself. And there are strategies around digestion, because digestion plays such an important role in our mood, and it can be a trigger for our emotional eating. And if we're in the diet mentality, that's going to also trigger a lot of obsessive thoughts, because we're really restricting and our body needs certain calories and nutrients. And so that turns on this obsession with food. So that right there tells me that your body's not getting the true nourishment it needs, and you're actually pushing it into more of this emotional eating pattern and binging. And here we also discern true from emotional hunger, because there's a way to do that. And that helps us connect more and more with our body. Once we have this piece, we can sort of see where the triggers are, where we're using food in a way that's that's in a coping way rather than for truly nourishing our body. The second area really is around body acceptance, because this goes hand in hand with the emotional eating pattern. We start, criticizing our bodies and trying to fit it into a certain box to get that love and that acceptance. And then when we can't do it and we become mentally very negative, that turns on our emotional eating pattern. And so we cope with food to feel better, and we're in this cycle. And the way to sort of move through and resolve this and to help us with our emotional eating pattern is to really start connecting back to our body in terms of its rhythms, its needs for rest and movement, and also realizing that our worth is not in our body, and sort of separating this out, because everything is sort of mixed in, and we are turning to food to soothe emotions and turning to our body for our worth. And there's all of these mixed up messages that we need to sort of unpack. The third area is really around the emotions under the emotional eating pattern. So the actual unresolved issues and traumas that created this pattern that are the deeper needs. So as we move through this on a somatic level, because that's where we hold trauma, we start resolving this pattern at the deepest root. So the other areas we're triggered into emotional eating, but those are physical things we can do. But this area, it's more about that actual event that created this pattern or events, and meeting our true needs, not using food to cover it up or distract from it. And then this is how we can sort of reprogram this event and move forward really powerfully. So we're not just bypassing, we're actually doing that deeper work and experiencing what happened, not as we're going through the trauma again, we're just able to process it at this deeper level. And so when we do things like talk therapy, we're just in our mind. We're not actually hitting the trauma and what's stored in our body. And so we're trying to figure out what happened to us in our mind, but we can access that really clearly in the body over time. And so that's what makes it so powerful. And as we're connecting in with food, with our body, and actually connecting into what our body needs, this opens up this doorway so much more. And as we're nourishing our bodies, we're able to integrate more. So everything sort of feeds into the other. And I don't want to overcomplicate this video, but these are the three main areas. And within the emotional eating evolution program, of course, it's more detailed on how to move through that. And there are more nuances that I can't really discuss here because it is a process, and there is also coaching and accountability and just other things that are needed to move through. But those are the three main areas. And so that's what's really missing from a comprehensive program to help you move through your emotional eating pattern or any real coping mechanism or coping pattern. We need to sort of move through these areas. And so when I work with clients, they're given the step-by-step methodology, but then of course they're given that support and that guidance and, that container so they can go deeper, so that they're moving through that resistance. They're really understanding their pattern. And when we start understanding things and it becomes really conscious to us, it's really hard to go backwards because we start seeing clearly what we're doing. We're not taken over by the pattern. And as we move through this work, because we're nourishing our body, connecting with our body, and moving through those stuck emotions in our body, that clears up our body to feel actually good. We start feeling comfortable in our body. We start feeling at free and at ease. And of course, because our pattern with the food is sort of, we're putting food in its rightful place, we're not taken over by it. Food becomes so much more easeful. And we start creating that really beautiful relationship we want to food and our body, and even beyond to those in our life, for really honoring ourselves. And that's what's important to really move through this pattern. So we really need that program and that structure in place so we can flow and understand ourselves. It's really hard to be intuitive and connect to yourself when you haven't had this in place from your parents or caregivers or those that were modeling it to you. The reason you're in this coping mechanism and pattern is most likely this is what was modeled to you. It's usually what's modeled to us in society. And so we need a new way forward. We need to really move through this in a different way to get the results we want. So if you have any questions about what I've shared with you today, please let me know. I'd like to invite you to find out more about the Emotional Eating Evolution Program if what I'm saying is resonating and you feel like you're ready to commit to yourself. With a program that's going to help you move through your resistance so you can stay committed and you can follow through and you can understand what's been going on and get the results that you want. This is not a quick fix or a magic bullet. This is about sustainable change. So I'll leave the link for the program below. If you have any questions, please let me know. Please be sure to like and subscribe if you haven't to this channel, and I look forward to sharing more with you, and I hope you have a great day.